Hello, Tony and Eva. I hope that I've got your correct names. You have a very interesting concept here regarding the end of the World Library. Obviously, you've already done a fair bit of planning to get to this stage, and your ideas will probably be way ahead of anything that I can contribute, at least right now. However, I may be able to help you with this project, and I'm happy to catch up if you'd like to set up a Zoom call sometime. I have an academic background with multiple postgraduate qualifications and over 10 years experience designing learning materials and teaching in tertiary educational environments. I run a business development and training consultancy with a strong focus on education and reskilling. You can view some of my published work at the links on the last slide. I also have a practical survivalist background, growing up on a family-owned farm block, which I still retain. This was initially a pet project of my father's, and we spent many years developing a self-sufficient rural homesteading environment, largely off-grid. Our standard resources included John Seymour's Book of Self-Sufficiency, along with other homesteading and related books. Even today, we continue to practice a lot of similar activity on our residential properties, including propagating fruit trees, maintaining a vegetable garden, running a wetback wood burner with our own firewood supply, along with a variety of basic survival tools and equipment. Your project interests me for a number of reasons. Two influences, which I will mention only in passing, are particularly relevant here. The first was H.G. Wells and his novel The Shape of Things to Come, which I first saw as the movie version Things to Come. Wells' somewhat disturbing story concerns the breakdown of society after an extended war and its eventual rebuilding through technology and progress. The second influence was a highly rated BBC program from the mid-1970s called Survivors. This was a post-pandemic drama series which explored a world where nearly all human life had been wiped out and what this meant for those left alive. Issues included the absence of law and order, access to resources, psychological effects on survivors, and safety and security. Methodologically, you might be able to organize your library by adapting, say, Abraham Maslow's hierarchical schema, starting with basic survival needs, provisioning of food, water, shelter-related knowledge, before progressing through essential trade skills, e.g. plumbing, fabrication skills, energy generation, etc., then professional knowledge, health, medicine, dentistry, etc., then societal knowledge, culture, civics, planning, etc., and self-actualization, art, philosophy, values, altruism, etc. However, that said, your proposal does not strike me as being a simple collect and curation exercise. Beyond selection and storage, there are a significant number of other issues which probably need to be worked through. I've broken these down into a few major chunks, as you can see over the next few slides. What is the end of world event that you are planning for? Are we talking about a simple economic collapse, another pandemic, an asteroid impact, polar reversal, nuclear war, or something else? The nature of the event will have a big impact on how you curate the material and how you intend it to be retrieved and used in the future. There may also have to be some serious thought around the infrastructure required to store and retrieve the library material in different scenarios. Who is going to use the library material? Is Westhaven Estate intended to be a personal bolt hole for you and your family? Alternatively, is it going to be a hub from which learning is redistributed? And if so, how? When is the library intended to be used? Are we talking about ongoing use of material immediately after an event? Will it be a slow release, organic rollout of knowledge over a wider geographic area? Why are you doing this? Preservation of knowledge is obviously a great starting point. However, the management and dissemination of that knowledge is also an issue which deserves some forethought. For instance, would you want everyone to know that mixing fertilizer and diesel fuel creates powerful explosives? How will you manage the distribution of this knowledge? Is this solely for in-house use? Is it intended to be an open source model with free access to all? Will it be controlled? And if so, how will it be defended? If it's intended to be for private use, then knowledge that this material exists could be a major security threat after an end-of-world event. Some thought also needs to go to preserving the collection from broader existential threats. The burning of the library at Alexandria resulted in an irrecoverable loss of valuable manuscripts, primarily because there was no built-in redundancy to the storage system. The burning of the library in Eco's The Name of the Rose was a disaster from similar consequences. Some of this might sound alarmist, but they're likely to be very real threats in an end-of-world scenario event. There are other preservation issues here as well. You might be considering a range of media options for storing the information, such as books, microfilm, digital, etc. In a true end-of-world scenario, the technology required to retrieve and read this data will probably either be destroyed or very limited in its use. Laptops, for instance, will reach the end of their lives, and there will not be any way to repair them. Any technological device will require a power source to operate, and data will corrupt over time in storage. Reasonably, the most reliably durable media will be books, but these too will age and even deteriorate simply through repeated use, and dust, moisture, molds, and bugs are other enemies which you'll have to contend with. How many redundant copies of important works do you want to hold? Historically, one answer to this problem is to provide for a dedicated scriptorium, which can come into being following the end-of-world event. This brings us to another point. Recorded information in books and other storage media is only part of the story of preserving knowledge. A second part is the use of artifacts as part of the knowledge collection. Examples of artifacts include tools, equipment, models, and other hard three-dimensional objects. On a practical level, survivors of world-ending events will need tools in order to survive and rebuild. On a conceptual level, these artifacts are needed so that they can be easily copied and replicated. So, your library should include examples of useful and important artifacts as part of the collection, with additional examples available for utilization and application. We can take this idea even a step further. There is an issue around access to resources. A book on medicine is very limited if you don't have access to medicinal products. Similarly, food will be an essential part of survival and rebuilding. There needs to be a library of essential foods, e.g. herbs, root vegetables, fruits, etc., which can be planted following the end-of-world event. Ideally, some of this will be already growing in and around Westhaven Estate in sufficient quantities to sustain any local population. In effect, this would be your local version of the global seed vault in Svalbard, but with an emphasis on foods which can be grown locally in the Tasman area. Whether we are talking about pure knowledge, artifacts, or plant materials, you'll also need people with existing skills to utilize them. No single person or small group of people can have enough time, energy, or ability to master all of the knowledge-based requirements inherent in a survival and recovery program. Even where expertise exists, you still need built-in redundancy to make the program work. Imagine the death of your only medical professional or your only trade specialist. So, it sounds as if you may also need to curate a community of people who can utilize the knowledge and skills. An academic knowledge of metallurgy is quite a different beast from practical metallurgy skills, and similar comments apply to other disciplines. Now, this raises an interesting opportunity. The library concept could be extended to include human capital. However, that idea does not mean that you have to carry a large-scale local population. Instead, you could achieve the same result by having a cadre of people who will be pre-approved for access to Westhaven Estate should an end-of-world event occur. Taking this idea of human capital a step further, you could offer training programs at Westhaven Estate where you run practical courses and skills which would support the wider concept of knowledge preservation and revival. This could include broad survival skills, horticultural skills, use of tools, energy generation, and participation on specific projects. In the absence of law and order following an end-of-world event, your best form of security and stability would come from a dedicated team of people who would share in your wider vision. These people can support your success locally post-event, and they can also go out as evangelists to spread the word to other communities which are recovering from the end-of-world event. This approach would also allow you to liaise with similar end-of-world survival projects elsewhere, allowing for the sharing of best practice methodologies and study tours, all of which would be part of your pre-event preparation. Is this straying too far from the original end-of-world library concept? Probably not, as knowledge is devoid of meaning if it cannot be applied to a human-centric purpose. Have I oversold to you? I think you're on the right track here, and I'd love to be able to discuss this further with you. I am Wellington-based, but if the opportunity arises to meet with you for a few hours or to visit you at Westhaven Estate, then I think we could have a lot to discuss. I've included a more detailed bio page on the next slide with further information about my background and experience. If you decide to look elsewhere for your library project curator, then all the best for the future.